I'm here today to talk about the transformative power of personal projects, because what started as a personal project for me changed my life. For the past 5 years, I've been living in a box of my own design. And like many New Yorkers, my box was my job, working at an interactive agency helping brands market themselves online. And for a long time, my box provided me with comfort, solace, pleasure, even excitement at times. But after a while, this feeling started to bubble inside of me that there was something else out there for me, something different than what I was doing. And there came a point when I found myself sleeping with my BlackBerry at night and answering emails at 3 o'clock in the morning, that I realized my box had become stifling and suffocating. So I turned to my family, my friends, my mentors for advice. Some of them told me, "Elizabeth, it's the middle of the recession. It's no time to leave a job." The logical part of me and the fearful part of me thought that they were right. I looked around and saw people losing their jobs and out of work, parents unable to put food on the table for their children. People were losing their life savings practically overnight, it seemed. My own father had to close down his factory and lay off his workers. Other people advised me differently, and they said, in life, you must follow your passion. And if you do that, everything will fall into place and success will come. We've all heard this before. And because this feeling that had been bubbling inside of me persisted, I really wanted to believe this advice. So I began to think, what am I passionate in? And I made a list. And the problem I ran into was that my list was way too long. I had studied behavioral psychology. I worked in advertising and marketing. I was interested in fashion, and I loved to write. But not one thing rose to the top of the list. And I remembered back to a time when I was a teenager, and I had this friend who wanted to become a dentist. And so he went on throughout high school and college and medical school. He became a dental surgeon. From the moment that he was 15 years old, he never wavered from what he wanted to do or become. I couldn't relate to this at all. Here I had this way too long list that felt fragmented and mismatched, and I couldn't see how any of the things on my list could fit together in any one role or one job. I felt directionless and lost. I didn't know what to do, so I stayed at my job. And I allowed myself to become one of the biggest things that stands in the way of passion. I became complacent. Until one day, about 1.5 years ago, when I had a completely unintentional moment of inspiration. It was winter in New York, a Sunday afternoon, and it was the middle of a snowstorm. I was at home with my fiancé, and we didn't want to go outside. The weather was too bad. He decided he wanted to spend the afternoon painting. And when he paints, he has a ritual where he turns up the music really, really loud. And it could be Bach or it could be Pearl Jam. It doesn't matter, it's blasting. And he puts on his work clothes with paint stains all over them. He takes out every single color paint that he owns and he spreads it across our entire dining room table. He goes through his sketchbook to see which sketch he wants to bring to life that day. And when he paints, he has this thing where he can't sit down. So for hours, he's standing, pacing around the table as he paints. And on this particular afternoon, I'm watching him, and I see how not only is he creating something, but he's an active participant in his creation. And I became so inspired. I thought to myself, I want to create something. I want to contribute. But I'm not a painter. I'm not an artist. What can I do? So I sat down at my computer and I started writing. And I wrote about one of the subjects I know a lot about. I wrote about fashion and digital marketing. And as I wrote, I clung to this moment of inspiration because I knew that in writing, I was nourishing a part of myself I had been neglecting for so long. At the end of the day, I created a place for my writing to live. I created a website that I called Fashions Collective. And the first article that I published was a case study on Prada and how challenging it can be for a luxury brand who's so rooted in their history, their legacy, and exclusivity to market themselves online, a place that's the opposite of exclusive. And I wrote all about it. And without a second thought, I clicked the publish button. And that's when everything changed. A few days later, Prada called me. They had read the article, and they wanted to meet to talk about digital marketing. My first thought was, of course I'll meet with you. My second thought was, wow, people read this. And in that meeting, I caught a glimpse of what Fashions Collective could become. So I kept writing. The Advertising Club of New York asked me to come and speak on a panel about fashion and digital marketing. I agreed, but I was so nervous. I had never done anything like that. But on that panel, while it was happening, I just became so energized with ideas. And I was probably talking 1,000,000 miles a minute with a smile plastered across my face the entire time, but I didn't care. I had finally hit my stride. And in that moment, I made a decision that I was going to feed Fashions Collective with all of the resources that I had at my disposal, my time, my effort, my energy, whatever extra money I had. And I was going to grow it and cultivate it and see what I could do. I hired a designer and a developer, and we relaunched the site. I brought on a team of contributors who were all experts in this industry, people who I respected and would be honored to work with, like Tamar Koifman and Scott Forshey. And I turned Fashions Collective into a publication. And it was so funny because none of us were writers or journalists. I had no experience whatsoever launching a publication or being an editor. But we were all fueled by this collective interest in this emerging industry and the opportunity to spark a dialogue and be thought-provoking. I'll never forget the first time that one of our articles got picked up by a major publication. I woke up that morning and logged on to Fashions Collective and saw the biggest spike in traffic I had seen. And then I saw why. And I was just filled with this sense of awe at what I had created and what it had become. And since then, we've been picked up by more publications, more times than I could even remember. Within the first 6 months in a super niche industry, over 100,000 people had read Fashions Collective. It was almost like with every click of that publish button, momentum was building. I had the opportunity to meet some of the most amazing people. On a whim, I sent an email to a renowned cognitive anthropologist. His name is Dr. Bob Deutsch. He had written this article on luxury and the psychology of luxury that I found so fascinating. So I sent him an email commenting on his article, never expecting anything in return. Instead, what I got was an email back within minutes and an invitation to breakfast the next morning. And over that breakfast, Dr. Bob described to me in detail the different research projects that he was working on and how he was understanding how people in different circumstances think and behave and act and perceive, and how brands could use this information to craft more meaningful communication strategies and resonate with their customers. And the whole time that he's telling me this, I'm on the edge of my seat, and I'm so excited. And I'm ready to jump up and say, I want to be a part of this. How can I be a part of this? Just tell me what to do. I'll do it. And luckily, before that happened, Dr. Bob said to me that he was interested in working with me and collaborating with Fashions Collective. Since then, he's written several articles, and we're now working together on a research study understanding the mentality of a luxury consumer in a post-recession era. It was almost as if, with all of these small victories along the way, and there were so many, and I celebrated every single one of them, it was giving me the stamina to continue working so hard at Fashions Collective, because it was so much hard work, and I've never worked harder in my life. I would go to my job and come home and work on it throughout the night and into the weekend for months and months on end. But the funny thing was, with all that work and all that extra time, it never felt draining or depleting. Instead, it felt exhilarating. In December, I was asked to go and speak at the Fashion 2.0 conference in Frankfurt, Germany. I knew it was a really big opportunity, but I had no more vacation days left at my job, and I didn't see how I'd be able to go. But I looked at myself and I said, I'm waging a war against my own complacency. And by not seizing this opportunity to go and to speak in Germany, it would be like accepting defeat. And I had turned myself into way too fierce of a contender to let that happen. So I went to my job all day. I went straight to the airport and got on a plane, flew all night, practiced my presentation on the plane. And when we landed, I went right to the seminar and got on stage and gave my presentation. Got on a plane and came right home. It sounds crazy, but it was almost not an option not to do that. And momentum built up so much that I left my job. And I learned that by breaking out of my box, I could create what I wanted. I didn't have to wait for the role or the job to be presented to me. I could make it for myself. And I learned that I could be the catalyst for my own transformation. We're all creators, whether we grow gardens or start families, make paintings or establish businesses. And it's in creating that we feel the most alive. It's almost like with every creation, we're igniting another part of who we are until we're just illuminated. But creativity requires a spark of inspiration. And so often we look outside of ourselves to be inspired. Bali is a place that we come to be inspired by the beauty we see all around us. Think about watching the sunset over Puratana Lot and the Balinese people and the love that they have for their land and for their culture. But we also have to remember that we can inspire ourselves from within. And when that happens, we can tap into a passion that's so raw and so potent and so palpable that it has the power to transform. So if you happen to find yourself in a place of complacency, like I did, then look around and look within. Find something that you're passionate about, whether it's your life's purpose or just one thing on your list. Believe in it. Trust in it. Use it as your catalyst to transform. And just go for it. Thank you.